and that we are starting our second month of online distance learning. And that's all due to the tremendous work of the people that work in our school district, and more importantly, they're caring to want to take care of our students and families. And I'm very proud of that.
Thank you, Superintendent Stock. Next up, we have RUSD Board of Trustee President Rick Miller.
Great, thanks, Anna. Again, my name is Rick Miller. I'm the president of the school board, and I'm here representing my colleagues on the school board, Eric Stevens, Derek Counter, Camille Mabe, and Rochelle Price. And so appreciate the opportunity to be here and to ask questions and sort of represent the folks of Rocklin. And also, it's important to know that I'm in school, but more importantly, I'm a parent. I have two kids at Rocklin. One's a sophomore and one is a senior. So I'm particularly knowledgeable about the difficulty times these are as people are hitting these milestone moments and not able to celebrate the way that they wanted to and intended to. So looking forward to joining in that conversation in particular this evening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, President Miller. And next up, we have our Rocklin Teachers Professional Association President, RTPA President Travis Mojet.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Like the two before me said, definitely in some unprecedented times, not the way we want to be continuing education right now in Rocklin, but I'm here to help answer any questions, and I represent the teachers in the district all the way from our TK classrooms into our senior classrooms. So we've been hard at work the last 3 days preparing and making the shift into the 2.0 version of distant learning that will take us through the end of the school year. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions and things, and I hope we can answer a lot of those as we spend some time together tonight.
Thank you so much, Travis. And up next, we have Dr. Kathleen Pond.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Pond. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Ed Services. And while this is unprecedented times, I will say it has been probably the most inspirational time I've been part of. At the same time we're going through this health crisis, the amount of professional learning and preparation teachers have been participating in, also administrators and in conjunction with our neighbor groups. It's just been fantastic, and looking forward also to the conversation tonight to describe what phase 2 of our online learning will look like.
Thank you, Dr. Pond. And up next, Rocklin High School Principal Davis Stewart.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. My hope for tonight is that we will be able to alleviate maybe some of your concerns and answer your questions. And just to reiterate what Dr. Pond said, I too am inspired and impressed by the incredible dedication by our secondary staff and their commitment to making sure that our students have a continuity of learning. And it really has been very inspiring and I think we're probably more aligned now than we have been in the last 3 or 4 years. And so it really is, it's kind of, we've been working hard to get to that point. It took something like this, unfortunately, to get us there, but we're there. So anyway, thank you and welcome tonight.
Thank you so much, Principal Stewart. And last but not least, Rocklin Elementary Principal Amanda Makis.
All right, good evening, everyone. Amanda Makis. I'm the principal at Rocklin Elementary School. And I just want to note that this truly, again, it's those unprecedented times, but I am so fortunate to work with colleagues and an elementary staff who are committed and devoted to educational excellence in a distance learning model. They've been hard at work, stretching their rubber bands, engaging in PD, and honestly seeing the silver linings that this distance learning model is bringing. So looking forward to working with you guys tonight and answering and helping out in any way.
Thank you all so much. Well, let's get right to it. We've received many questions already as a result of our newsletter and Superintendent Stock's letter last week. So we're going to start with those. Right now we have about 100. We've received a lot more since his last note went out just several minutes ago. So the first big theme seems to be, how will the next phase of online learning go? Of course, we know starting Thursday, tomorrow, many questions from our families, our parents asked, how will it be structured? Dr. Pond can share with us the hard work that's being done to get us to this point and elaborate a little bit more on that.
And thank you. Yes, we really are committed to providing continuity in our education through the duration of the COVID-19 closures. And the learning that has been scheduled that will commence tomorrow will look differently for elementary and secondary. There are schedules for secondary that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, ELA, social science, and electives in ELA, English Language Arts, social science and the electives will be taught. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays, math, science, and PE will be taught. Both the elementary and secondary levels are using Monday for instructional meetings, for professional learning, for committee meetings, and collaboration for the planning that they want to execute in this time. Our elementary schedules generally will be that students would receive about 30 minutes of instruction for English language arts, reading and writing, and mathematics, and then an additional 30 minutes for their PE and BAPA and English language development if they're English learners. And so the morning we have focused, some essential standards that we want to expose students to over the next 6 weeks. And we also are planning to embed some social emotional learning and support for our students at this time of crisis. And I'm going to hand it over to our two principals and our TBA president, and they may want to comment a little bit more on the details.
So from an elementary perspective, our teachers have been hard at work at identifying some of those essential standards in English language arts, particularly in reading and writing, as well as in mathematics, and have been hard at work in creating and designing engaging lesson plans around that to deliver in this distance learning model. Looking at different platforms, they have been exposed to a lot of PD, looking at some different opportunities with Flipgrid, Google Classroom, all opportunities to really, continue those connections with students. We find that that's really important to maintain during this time, is that connectivity with our kiddos. So very fortunate. Our teachers at the elementary level, again, are working incredibly hard and doing great things.
And just to back up a little bit what Principal Makis said there, the return to normalcy or having some kind of normalcy is really important, especially during stressful times. And so not only normalcy in providing education, but normalcy in providing a connection with their teacher and classmates. And so secondary teachers have been working incredibly hard, also learning new platforms to engage, some new learning, but also a greater understanding or a greater depth of previously learned skills. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the grading component of it, because I think that is a big question and has created a little bit of angst in our community, and love to respond to some of those. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Travis.
Yeah, thank you. Both Amanda and Davis, you guys kind of nailed it on the head. There's been a lot of hours put in, especially in the last 3 days, by teachers from the little guys all the way up to our seniors. So I'm optimistic that we'll make the best. Well, I know we will. I know Rocklin teachers and Rocklin Unified will make the best of the situation, any curveballs that are thrown at us. I'm hopeful that through tonight we'll be able to provide the clarity, like Mr. Stewart said prior, to some of those big questions around grading and continuity and kind of what are things going to look like, as well as being able to, for teachers to address the social emotional needs that come with this crisis and this situation. There's a huge element to school that is outside the classroom that our kids thrive on and look forward to every day. And that's very much missing for a lot of them right now. So we're really trying to shift a lot of our focus as much on our academics as well on that social emotional need and connecting, and even seeing things as simple as a Zoom or Google Meet, just for kids to have some FaceTime with their peers and their teacher and not have any academic content. So we're see a lot of shifts in that support throughout the next 5 to 6 weeks as we kind of ride to the end of the school year. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Great, thank you all. A lot of secondary questions as a result of that one. The first one, I'll throw this out there, is our online learning required? That's a question I get from a 7th grader. Is this mandatory or not? And will there be grades? And if yes, how will they be graded?
That's a great question. Kathy, did you want to take it first?
I just wanted to just generally say that, yes, students are expected to engage with the online distance learning. And for students who don't have adequate tools, the district is, continuing to work with families to provide the tools, the technology tools, and we have a great plan to hold kids harmless. And both Dave Stewart and Amanda Makus will talk a little bit about what that looks like with grades.
If I could just jump in for a moment and just say the overall philosophy that we really wanted to work with was one of understanding some of what Travis mentioned, which was the social emotional needs on individual students and families. And so our goal was to hold kids harmless and make sure that they could continue to learn and that we acknowledge the previous learning that's occurred in this trimester and semester as well. But we have no way of knowing the impact that each individual student and family is going throughout this extended closure. So we wanted to develop, in partnership with our labor partners and our principals and teachers and everyone, a way to hold kids harmless but continue learning and to reward the learning and the efforts made by students to improve their grades. So you'll hear more details about that, but that was our overall philosophy, was to make sure we support our kids and families, reduce the stress and anxiety as best we can, but also help kids continue to learn that are in wanting to seek to improve themselves and their academics.
And at an elementary level, that would look like teachers will be again focusing on those 2 to 3 essential standards and delivering instruction and content around those. Students will have the opportunity to improve their number grade from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3 based on some sort of assessment that the teacher would work on. But again, the key is that the student's grade will not be reduced or go down from that second trimester grade at the elementary level.
And just to add on a little bit to that, at the secondary level, it'll be twofold. One, to bring up students who maybe hadn't mastered all the essential skills and concepts at the end of the third quarter. And they would do that a couple different ways: by learning new content with previously learned skills so they could show a greater depth of knowledge. And then the other one would be through the enrichment process. And in doing that, in continuing that learning, all the research shows that students will be more prepared for whatever next level or next step that they're coming to. If we were to have a gap of 5 or 6 months, rather than maybe 2 that we're looking at now, all the studies show that it's easier to step back in when and if school resumes in the fall.
Okay.
Can I just add one thing? I do feel like as we talk to teachers and administrators, and hopefully this puts parents at ease, this is really a great opportunity for us to look at how students progress and how they show us their learning, and not have that pressure of a grade, but really looking at, demonstrations of student learning through projects or actual student artifacts of work, or oral interaction. So we're really looking forward to looking at the formative ways that students show their learning, and this can be very exciting for teachers and students.
Thank you. I think we have so much to cover. We've gotten a lot of questions that are site specific and also for the secondary level and elementary level, so I might come back to them. But overall, a lot of parents are asking, they have some high achieving high school students, how can they raise their grades? So I will pose that one because we got several.
And so, yeah, I can respond to that. And really one of the things I think that was most inspiring for me, that at all our secondary schools, all our teachers, and remember, grades are at the discretion of each teacher. And so for the alignment as a secondary unit, and I would imagine elementary is the same way, that every student pretty much across the board is going to have an opportunity to raise their grade. I was really impressed when I put that question out to my colleagues this morning, and they got right back to me. And it's really inspiring to see that they had really rich, deep conversations about where we were as a school, as a society, and to really take that stress off students and to give them those multiple opportunities. The other thing about Rocklin Unified that not a lot of school districts have is that we don't give D's or F's, and that we continue to work with students all along to gain that mastery level. And so our students are already used to that process, that they can go to a deeper level of understanding. The new material will be looked at or assessed for understanding, so a check for understanding, but it would not count as a letter grade or points on the fourth quarter. It could possibly go back if it was a deeper level of knowledge on a previously learned skill. And so that's kind of the simplistic way of how they would learn their grade. At the high school, for example, we just finished the third quarter, and so their grades had a pause right there. And now we're going to get into a corrective phase where they could learn new content by applying previously learned skills at a deeper level. Then they would be rewarded in that third quarter grade, and that grade would elevate.
Okay. I'm going to move on now to a bigger, almost sadder topic, because it's certainly end of year activities and especially graduations for our class of 2020. Big question, when will they be held? So Superintendent Stock, would you like to begin?
Sure. We know, and this is as a former high school teacher and principal and parent as well, that how meaningful these once in a lifetime celebrations are. And so we are committed. We've been talking with our high schools to holding a graduation ceremony for the class of 2020. What we don't know is when that will occur. And so we are committed to making sure we honor them with an in-person graduation. But there's going to be a lot of questions that we get tonight that we just don't know the answers. And that's partly because they are contingent upon the public health situation and other developments that occur. And so we will begin, we have already begun, and we will continue reaching out to our seniors and their families about how can we make this a meaningful time for them? What ways can we mark the June 4th, 5th graduation days? And then how can we hold a ceremony that will be, that will give them that opportunity to have that once in a lifetime celebration? And we're committed to it. We just don't know when. And we will be working on that throughout this spring. And we'll keep people posted as we have those details. But I can tell you our principals and activities directors are chomping at the bit to get going on planning when that ceremony, because we do outstanding recognition. So that's high school graduation. Some of our other events, we'll be working to see how can we mark them to acknowledge the specialness of them. But some will be canceled and because they just can't be postponed. But we do want to work to acknowledge these special milestones the best we can. But graduation will happen. We just don't know when for the class of 2020.
Can I just add to that? So thanks, Roger. Can I just add to that as well? That to Roger's point is that we will, I think it's almost assured to say the chance of it happening in June are almost non-existent, just given where we are with the current virus. But whenever it is lifted, whenever we can have that many people together, we will do it. Be it late summer, fall, even into next year, if that's what it takes. That's what we'll do. But in addition to that, this June 4th will come and go, the dates or around there with the dates for the different ceremonies. And we are looking also, in addition, to make sure there's some way we recognize that moment at time when that happens. And so that would be some virtual something or other, but also we're looking at multiple ways of doing this. And I know that there's been a group of parents who've been on social media talking about ways to do this. And we are open to working with folks and hearing what folks' ideas are. I know as a parent, I know how it hits all of us. And I know that people want to engage. We want them to be engaged to figure out different ways to think about how we acknowledge this amazing milestone that our seniors are about to cross.
Great. And Superintendent Stock, you kind of alluded to this, but we do have a lot of parents asking about those other special commencement, the promotions for 6th and 8th graders. Same thing, kind of a wait and see until we kind of gathered information.
Well, it has increasingly been apparent, as President Miller said, that we'll be able to hold any in-person celebrations this June and maybe even into the summer. We just don't know. So we will find some way of acknowledging those special promotions from 6th to 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade. And we're working out those details of a way to acknowledge those special milestones for students.
All right. And speaking of which, a lot of folks were asking, how do students get reimbursed for various activities, whether it's at the elementary level or the high school level, middle school prom, senior grad night, junior proms? Who would like to start?
So
go ahead.
Okay. Principal Makis.
Raise my hand.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So at the elementary level, we recognize that we want to be able to provide that support for our families. So if they would like a reimbursement for a field trip or some class fees that they've paid or done, they're welcome to contact and reach out to their site principal. And that principal will make arrangements to give you that reimbursement for those activities.
And at the secondary level, it'll be the same thing. At the two high schools, it'll be the activities director. They're the ones that can have the ASB funds where most of those things went. And then it would be the principal at the two middle schools.
I also can share a little bit about the transportation and nutrition services. We'll be sending out information, but for our students that have bus passes, we are going to offer to do one of two things. One is we'll roll that money over onto next year's bus pass. And if you would like us to do that, and if you would like a reimbursement, we'll provide that as well. For seniors, obviously, we'll provide a reimbursement. And then for our nutrition services, this happens anyway. We roll over the amount on a student's account at the end of the year. So we've frozen that amount because students are not being charged for the meals being served, and they will not be for the rest of this year. And we will roll over those account balances to start the next year. But if you do need a reimbursement, you can contact our nutrition services department and we'll get that to you. Information will be going out directly from both transportation and nutrition services to families.
Thank you. And we just got a question that kind of is related. How will RUSD be handling the freshmen and the 7th grade orientations, the pre-2020-21 school year? There's special times because they're moving on up, and how will those be handled?
So I can speak a little bit to the high school one, and I'm sure the middle schools will be doing the same, is that we've put together a plan to plan. And so how do we make these decisions and determinations? We could plan everything right now, and then next week or the week after, it's probably going to change. And that's what we've learned over the last probably 4 or 5 weeks, that this is really a moving target much of the time. And so what we will do is we have a timeline of when we need to get these things set and how we do it and how we provide equity and access for all our students in all our events, because that's a key priority for Rocklin Unified. And then we would message that out. We know we are going to be at an online or a distance learning school until May 29th. And so we will be updating everybody as soon as we get as much information as we can. The most concrete date, and I'm sure Superintendent Stock could speak a little bit more to this, would be May 1st is kind of the next one that we've heard that there would be more information revealed as to what would happen after that. But at this point, as Mr. Stock said, there are more questions than there are answers. And it seems like the more questions we ask, the more questions we get. And that's okay, because that just, we all care. We live in a great connected community, and that's the great part about Rocklin.
True. I think we can definitely look toward some sort of, again, virtual events, so that we can help students get ready for the next year. And again, we don't know exactly what those are going to look like, but we do know that we will be communicating to provide access and equity. But chances are very great that there will be some sort of virtual kind of registration and implementation and all of that.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that briefly as well, just from the teacher's perspective, is that as much time and energy that's going into the distant learning model that we're preparing to ramp up for tomorrow, the discussion of what is the fall going to look like, whether it's the reteaching or additional teaching that's going to happen in the academic side of school, but also how are we going to welcome students back into a traditional environment whenever that happens, whether it is right at the beginning of the calendar year next year, or if for, some unforeseen reason we push that back. So that is very much in the forefront of what we're planning in our classrooms right now and driving those decisions even now, and even more so as we kind of transition later into this school year and over the summer. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of further discussion around that as well. So it's a big question that we don't have answers, but like Mr. Stewart said, we're going to continue working the problem as best we can, and we'll adapt and be fluid as much as we need to in the process.
Thank you all. I hope this is an easy one. What's the status of yearbooks at all of our sites? I'm probably guessing that they might vary.
Yeah, the great part about the yearbook, and we did check with them, all the deadlines had been met. I think the last one had ended right around just before spring break. So the book will be published. For distribution, Rocklin High just kind of did the pilot today, and I know Whitney High School is going through the cap and gown pickup. and there was actually a higher return. More students picked up their cap and gown today than they do when we normally have it. We usually have about 50 left, and today there was only about 20 to 25. And so they were very eager to come down. We had a little, assembly through the, not assembly, but a line going through the parking lot. It was very efficient. We talked briefly about it afterwards and thought that that same model could work for yearbook distribution, and then possibly book check-ins and materials, picking up materials and other items, PE lockers and stuff like that. And all, again, that's part of that planning to plan, that timeline that we have, that we are just diving into. And as soon as we get those dates and that timeline out, we'll be definitely messaging that to our school communities.
And at the elementary level, we're still working out the specifics, but all students will have an opportunity to pick up their yearbook as well.
And just to build on this, not just related to yearbooks, but we are developing multiple scenarios and contingencies, as the group shared. And so we want to be ready for whatever the public health situation may give us. Of course, we would love to be in person and together with everyone, but we have different scenarios that we work through. And I have the opportunity to speak with our Placer County Public Health Officer at least once a week to receive updates on the situation. And we're committed to continuing to follow the guidance that Dr. Amy Sessions, our Placer County Public Health Officer, provides, as well as the public health officials in the state of California. And so they really are guiding, when we can go to in-person, when we can do different activities. But we are committed, as you heard from great examples, of trying to give whatever normal back we can in these unprecedented times.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to special education. We've received many questions about that, and they range from, are there any specific programs to help our special ed students? Some of our parents mentioned they're having difficulty with the online home learning, and they're afraid their students will fall further behind. There's more questions, but let's start with that one.
So we are working, our case managers and our director of special education and assistant director are working with case managers and all of our service providers to try to determine the best way. We know there are challenges with online learning with some students, and so we are working through those challenges, as well as looking at IEPs, even looking if there are times if there are outside providers that can assist us. And as you know, it's an individual case-by-case scenario. But I will say that our commitment is high in terms of how we might deliver, support for students accessing the curriculum, as well as work on individual goals to the degree we can in an online environment.
And if I can just add in, we launched a newer, updated version of our online support for parents in elementary, secondary, English learners, special education students on our website. So if you're looking for some specific details, whether it be answers to some of these questions, resources, and working with your student, those are all there. And if you go to the district's webpage at www.rocklinusd.org, it is right there, and it's been revamped to make it as easy to point and click and find information, including schedules that were mentioned earlier in the conversation about what subjects happen on what days. And so encourage you to check that for lots of resources, even social emotional supports for students, or if you're wanting any assistance with maybe potential behavior or classroom management in your in-home classroom. Because as a parent of a fourth grader, sometimes I'm having those challenges a little bit as well.
And that information is not just for special ed students, but for all of our students. It is on the homepage. It's right up top there. You can't miss it. It's brand new. Can we get into individual education plans, IEPs? Will they be held virtually? Is there any update there?
Again, to the degree we can, the district special ed department is working with staff and families, and case managers are going to be reaching out to families over the next several weeks. And some IEPs will be held virtually, depending on whether or not we have the data and the assessment data to be able to hold those IEPs. And so some of them will move forward, and others will have to be dependent on some other data that may have to be collected when we resume school.
All right. Moving on, will there be summer school, especially for high school students? So we can start with.
I mean, I'll just give a little overview. We are looking at, for students, usually our summer school has been for students in high school who are credit deficient. And number one, we're thinking in this environment where we have an opportunity to improve grades that we may have fewer students actually that may be in need of summer school. However, for those who may be credit deficient prior to our COVID shelter in place, we are looking at probably a virtual type of summer program that we can offer also. And again, those plans are just being developed as we speak. And probably we will be looking and communicating with families over the next few weeks.
We also are looking at options and opportunities for our ESY to the extent possible, which is mandated by or decided in the student's IEP of how we can continue ESY is appropriate. We also are beginning to think about, are there ways for some of our students that typically could be at risk for losing the most learning, our English learners, our students in poverty? And so we're also exploring some options especially at the elementary level for assisting those students. And it would, of course, look in a virtual or online manner. And so we're beginning to put those plans together, and we'll be sending out more information as we develop those plans, consult with and talk with our labor partners and other people to get the best thinking around this.
Right. One just came in. Will we be notified? It's about the GATE program. Will we be notified before May 29th about whether or not our child was selected via the lottery for the 2021 school year GATE program?
And I would say yes, staff is working on the GATE program, and they are continuing to get class lists and notifying parents. And Amanda, you may have some other information.
Yes, we are in the process of notifying parents if their child has been accepted into the GATE program. Our clerk at Rocklin Elementary School, Renee Robertson, is personally making those phone calls and reaching out.
I think this is a good time to say too, our staff, our teachers, everyone is really just doing such an amazing job, constantly on it, answering questions. So when you do have questions and we don't answer them here, we will reach out to each site principal, because some of the questions are very site specific. So we want to make sure we get you those answers. We have your name, and I will be going through all of this and make sure the principal at that specific school gets your question in case we don't answer it today. My son still needs to do his community service hours. How is that being calculated during the stay-at-home order?
That's a great question. That's actually on one of our sheets, and we're going to try to come up with something creative. But obviously, with a stay-at-home order and social distancing in place, it's not going to look the same as we did before. So it could be a reflection piece on maybe something that they've done in the past or something that they plan on doing in the future. But no concrete plans have been in place. But I will say, just as with fourth quarter grades, they will not be held, that they'll be harmless. They're not going to prohibit them from graduating or moving on.
Okay. And how do students get their things from their PE lockers? Heard this a bunch.
So that's a good one. We could probably ask Scott Collins on that one. He had a little, just a messaging issue on that. And so we do have it. That's one of those timelines to plan. We wanted to get the second phase launched, and then we'll be setting up a timeline and a process of how we're going to do that. Obviously, we're going to work with our custodial staff, and because we want to make sure that we're A, accounting for those lockers, and B, that it's in sanitary conditions. And I could see something to where we schedule times for certain classes to come through our parking lots and pick up the stuff, and they'd probably be in some type of baggie or bag to where we would have the student's name on there so that they could come by and pick them up. That same would go for materials from our art classes, and also dropping off textbooks. Again, that would be something that we want to make sure that we have the proper cleaning materials in place to make sure that we're not potentially spreading the virus with that.
Okay.
I want to add a piece to that too. As parents likely know by now, we changed the academic end date for the school year to May 29th. And a lot of that reasoning was to address that specific issue of giving teachers hopefully safe access to campuses that first week of June. And hopefully we'll have some more guidance by the county health office to what it can look like to have students in small groups or in whatever that's going to look like to access campus to collect into the year portfolios, projects, turn in materials, and all those varying things that might be still on campuses or at home that need to get back to campuses if we can't find a way to do some of that mitigation prior to the end of May.
Thank you. And before I move on to the next question, I just want to alert our Chief Technology Officer, who is awesome and has been working extremely hard getting Chromebooks out. Something's happening with the 5 computers that you set up for me. So I know he's in another room. We're all at the district. He and I are at the district office. So if you could just come on in here and make sure I'm not going to go dark, I'd really appreciate it. But I think we have a few more minutes for me at least. This goes until 6:30. I just don't want to go dark on you. Will there be state testing, CASP, at the end of the year? And will there be any end of year testing in any subjects through Schoology?
And so there is no state testing that has been announced at the Department of Education, and there's no state testing for our English learners or for physical education. We will not be holding district tests, any of our local MAP testing at the end of the year. While teachers may assess for student understanding, again, there's not going to be a formal test. We can talk a little bit about the AP testing for advanced placement is going to continue, and students have been notified it's going to be in a modified online version. We know that the SAT testing has stopped, and our most recent information from the College Board is that they will continue SAT administration as soon as they can. They're hoping for August, but it could even be fall, and it will be offered a lot more frequently next year for next year's groups of students who are taking SAT.
Also, just want to add a couple pieces. We've linked in our website in that information section, direct links to the College Board, and also the CSU system and the UC system has indicated they will not be using SAT, ACT grade scores in their admissions decisions for current juniors that will be seniors next year applying for college in the fall of 21. So we want to make sure students are aware of that. The advanced placement scores, the UC and CSU system have announced that they will accept this year's scores, even though the test will be online in a modified fashion, and students will be able to take those exams at home or wherever they're sheltering in place. And so you can check information on our website or at their organizational websites as well for the latest information.
And just to add on to that, the modifications, I believe, cover one of the standards that they've previously covered. So they know that it's material that every student would have covered up to that point.
And I want to add a little bit there as well from a parent perspective, just some expectations you might see as a parent of an AP or even a dual enrollment student. The model of distant learning is going to look different in those courses, given that they are guided by College Board and or Sierra College outside of Rocklin Unified. So you still might see some assessments and a little bit more formalities to the distant learning model in those specific environments. So our best recommendation is to just keep up that line of communication that you've probably been doing since all of this started, and even since the beginning of the year with those AP and dual enrollment teachers. That's going to be your best bet. They're taking whatever guidance they get from the college level and implementing that to the best they can with the resources and the circumstances we're all dealing with.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, this is a popular one. Will I get an informational email directly from each of my students' teachers? All grades.
So the email would probably come in the form of a Schoology update. And so for secondary, the most accurate way that they can stay in tuned is to make sure that they're checking Schoology regularly and to have those push notifications scheduled to where they receive that email anytime an update is made to the grade book. It really becomes just habitual that they're getting that information. And teachers have just done an incredible job of making sure that they are regularly updating Schoology. And not only regularly updating, and it goes to a little one that you mentioned earlier, but we're also looking at which students are engaging in our classes and actually participating. And so what we did in phase one was we tried to contact every student. Our counselors and office staff at all schools did an incredible job of students who maybe didn't log into Schoology or hadn't interacted in those classes were actually receiving a phone call from a counselor or office staff of, hey, what's going on? We're missing you in school. And so that connection and that reaching out, really just want to commend our counselors and our teachers for getting that information. And we have something very similar with the phase 2 being launched that we will try to connect with every student.
And at the elementary level too, teachers are also committed to staying in contact with obviously their students, but also families. We don't use Schoology at the elementary level, but teachers are using either Google Classroom or Seesaw, and at the least emails. So that is happening on a regular basis. We as well are kind of keeping a tab on seeing who's able to engage and who isn't. I've just made some phone calls to families just to connect and to see if there's any barriers, if we can help and support them in any way, whether it be a technology need or whatever they may need. So at the elementary level, principals too are working hard to connect with families, but teachers are doing it also on a regular basis.
Will there be any clubs possibly via Meet?
Clubs? I'm sorry, did you say clubs, Diana?
I'm sorry, yeah, like after school clubs.
I don't, that hasn't actually come up yet at the elementary level. Certainly something we can discuss. I'm not sure what that would look like, but something to consider. Thank you.
And I know that there have been some virtual meetings via, I think it was a Zoom for some of our clubs that were more ambitious and wanted to make sure they stayed connected and that they tried to finish some of the projects that they had started.
I'm moving to Rocklin in June. How do I register for one of the high schools? Is that a simple phone call? I also know we have online enrollment, and that part of the question is easy, except this is a new student. So do they call online?
The first step is to complete an online registration packet, which is available on our district website. And it's easy to find the link for enrollment. And you can complete the registration process online. Once that's done, that lets us know that you are, in our system. You can also reach out to the school that you think your student will be attending. And if you're not sure of what school that is in our community, you can log into our website and put in your address, and it will tell you the school for your child. And you can always reach out to the school office as well if you need any assistance in how to register for next year. If you are already in Rocklin Unified and you are in an elementary school, the middle school that your student is going to already knows that they're slated to go there. And the same if you're in a middle school already, the high school, Rocklin or Whitney, already knows that you're intending to be there and it will have reached out to you. If you do not hear anything, then always feel free to reach out.
And the exact link on our website is rocklinusd.org. And you can just click on registration under the parent tab or log directly onto registration.rocklinusd.org/registration. That's registration.rocklinusd.org/registration. And another parent is asking, once they do enroll, does you have to do anything else? Bring in any special forms? Is it 100%? And I think it is 100%, but I just want to confirm that they don't need to do anything else other than register online.
I believe
the registration would be the first step, and then they'll probably be asking them from some other documents, but all those could be scanned and sent digitally.
Okay. We received a few specific questions regarding provisions, what will be in place, what will we have in place to combat learning loss as a result of campuses closing due to COVID-19, and that's a big one. So who would like to begin?
I'll start. I think, we are, and it was mentioned earlier, we're in the planning stages even as we speak. I think Travis mentioned, we're talking about the vertical kinds of articulation we can have with teachers and different grade levels to talk about the essential skills that are covered and the ones that might need to be reviewed. I think we're all acknowledging that the year may start with some review for grade levels in different departments next year. And so we're going to be laying out plans this spring with our teachers as to how that looks. I think the beauty here with our digital and remote learning work that we've done is that we will be able to look at how we might provide some additional support in the form of online learning and virtual learning as we go through the years ahead, really.
And I just want to acknowledge that, this one of the most dramatic issues outside of the health and safety is that loss of learning. And it's not just students in Rocklin Unified, it's across the state and nation, and in fact, the world. Is schools and we've all shut down. And so we will take steps to do our best to mitigate. And part of that also will be once we get next year up and going in whatever fashion that is, that we want to assess student learning. What essential skills do they have? What gaps? In our elementary, all of our report cards and things are standards based, so we look at progression of learning. And in our secondary schools, we're very fortunate, as was shared earlier, that we base our curriculum on essential skills and mastery. So one of the first things we will do, even to decide what to review, is checking where students are at, because they will help guide us. And that's also, we'll be able to see the impacts of the online learning we're doing now, work we can do this summer with our students. And so while we will do our best planning, actually students and the gaps and knowledge they have will be the ultimate guides to what we actually decide to do.
And just one of the great things that came about in the agreement between RTPA and Rocklin Unified was that we extended the grading period to the first quarter of the fall. So we allow students to be able to make up those essential skills and concepts and grades all the way up through there. So the learning will continue. We pushed pause for a moment, but we also are going to continue on. And so I think that's, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to add to that. That piece does come with an element and expectation from students and parents that the effort is made and the communication, more importantly, is made between now and the end of the year. We're not trying to have 180 student contacts from this school year show up on a teacher's doorstep at the beginning of next year saying, all right, Mr. Stewart, I'm ready to do the stuff I didn't do last spring. So we are putting some of that expectation back on the student and household to support in whatever efforts they can to continue that learning and help bridge that gap. But yes, that safety net is there if needed. And that's going to be more of an individual basis. And like I said, a proactive approach. Things get in the way, and we want to make sure that again doesn't hold kids harmful in whatever progression they're trying to make in their grades, whether it's saving a credit from a corrective situation, or it's trying to advance or improve grades from this situation.
The other thing I'd add is that I appreciate that, Travis, is that, and I appreciate the amount of time everyone's put into this notion of learning loss and really thinking about it, and especially on progressions. And so this idea is that, if you're going to algebra, but you have work on your fractions, if you don't have your fractions set, you're not going to be successful at the next level. So thinking about those progressions, make sure you have it set before you move on to the next level. But in addition to those learning progressions, there's also sort of social emotional learning. This has been a traumatic experience for everyone, for all of our adults and for all of our students. And so I've been deeply appreciative of the work everyone on this call has been doing, and everyone in Rocklin Unified has been doing, thinking about that as well, and thinking about how to welcome kids back and how to think about those moments, what could be a disruptive year next year as well, and thinking about paying attention to the health of the child emotionally and making sure that they feel safe and they feel secure in school.
This question came up in a few different variations. So I'm just asking it like this. Why are students getting such a small turnaround time between when assignments are given and when they're due? Sometimes the volume of work is excessive. And another question came in, parents have jobs that they still have to do. So, and students have other responsibility, watching younger siblings. So we're having our families, like every other family across the state and across the country, having to deal with now so much on top of their own positions, and now helping with the homeschooling and online teaching.
So I'm going to jump onto that one, if you don't mind, Kathy. I know you're eager for it. But that whole principle of that question is why we spent an extensive amount of time right before our spring break started, and why we asked for an extended version of spring break was to address that exact need. Is that we know that parents at home, did not sign up and maybe don't even want to be homeschool teachers, and life just kind of threw them that curveball, as well as the reality of they are working and providing for their own family in whatever creative way that looks like during this situation as well. So part of the transition, which parents will start seeing as we enter back into this digital learning process tomorrow, is that there's a little bit more of a emphasis on the quality and not so much the quantity of what we're going to be doing, and a little bit more kind of a pullback on the amount of things. We've kind of capped the number of minutes or hours expected, and it's been adjusted based on a appropriate grade level. So a kindergartner is going to have a lower expectation of time they may be spending distant learning versus a junior high or high school student. So we know parents don't want students sitting at home with nothing to do, and that's not good for kids and education anyway. But we also we heard parents and students when they said, I'm putting in 10 hours, and I never put in 10 hours when I was doing the traditional school thing. So we wanted to make sure that that was acknowledged. And that's why with the high school and the secondary level, we're doing kind of more of an every other day rotation, which is a little bit more traditional to what we do at both the secondary high school level. And the elementary level, just kind of focusing in on those key subject areas that really build upon themselves, and progress from A to B to C and so on. And that's why we're really heavily focusing on the ELA and mathematics areas in the elementary world. And then, like I said, kind of an every other day rotation for our high school students, and middle school, kind of doing a blended version of those two things with their schedules as well. So that's also the reason, if parents haven't noticed yet, that we're giving students the Monday off. That's for families and students to have that mental health break, because this is very taxing, both socially, emotionally, physically. And we want families to have that opportunity to kind of just to take a breath and breathe and realize that we're all in this together. As well as selfishly as a teacher leader, I'm a teacher as well as a parent. So I'm doing this for my students, as well as have 3 Rocklin Unified students in my household doing the same thing from the student side. So we wanted to make sure that we're trying to balance our employee needs as much as our student and family needs. And we're hoping that this new schedule or kind of approach to distant learning will reflect that, and parents will hopefully feel a little bit less of the burden of the regiment of it and a little bit more of the focus on the real concrete key things to bridge and limit those gaps that might grow in this process between now and next fall.
And from an elementary perspective, too, teachers have been working hard now and recognizing that, there are several households that have multiple students, children in them, and parents feeling maybe inundated with the emails and reading through that and sifting through. So at an elementary perspective, teachers are really focusing in on those essential standards and trying to really simplify how that information is delivered to our families. Maybe some are color coding, but making it in a way that is easy for a parent to read and help and support their child during this time.
What I would add too is, and Travis did an outstanding job of just outlining the philosophy behind the shift in the learning, is what I'm most proud of is how dynamically our district has been learning about this online learning. And we've made adjustments from phase 1 to phase 2. And if we're unfortunately in a phase 3 next year, that we will continue to learn and evolve on what's the right balance, what's the right mix. What type of learning is best? We know we don't want students sitting in front of a screen for 8 hours a day. How do we incorporate more project-based to let students explore, have a little bit more agency over their learning, while also demonstrating, their whole capacity? So we continue to evolve, continue to learn to find that right mix of making sure students are being expanded and stretched in their learning, but also not having it be in an extraordinary stressful environment for students and families. And so we continue to learn and evolve, and that's the one thing we can guarantee is what it looks like. We'll continue to get better, we hope. And the key to that is us all listening to our families, to our students, and to our colleagues, and all working together to figure out what those right answers are. And so that is the one guarantee, is learning will evolve and get better and better.
Well, we have about 127 questions and we still are having them come in. So I'm going to hit you with some specific ones because some of them are repeats and I want to make sure we get to as many as we can. Again, if you have a site-specific question that you want an answer to, you certainly should call your principal, your teacher. Everyone is very responsive during this time in case we don't get to it tonight. What time will students meet with the teachers tomorrow? How will they do so? The game plan. And Travis kind of alluded to that, but always worth repeating some of the elements. Oops.
So I don't know if there's any set time at either school, but I can tell you that the expectation is that information will be posted on Schoology at the secondary level for assignments in language arts, and I don't have the schedule in front of me. The Thursday classes and the Friday classes as well. And then starting on Tuesday of next week is when the office hours would be starting at secondary.
Elementary, there's no set time either. Multiple teachers, if they are doing a recording of something, they are going to record themselves and post that on their Google Classroom, so students at any point can access that information. But there's no set time in the day that instruction is happening.
But just to add on a little bit to that, there's a lot to be said about routine. And so if you're one of those homeschool parents, my hat's off to you. I acknowledge the hard work that you're doing and the challenges that you have in front of there, but really to schedule that routine, and not only schedule a routine of how you're going to get online, but also into the physical activity of it too. That every 45 minutes to an hour, I think is what they recommend. You're getting up and stretching for at least 5 to 10 minutes. And I know at Rocklin High, our PE department has gotten very creative about working how they can get their PE fitness throughout a 5-hour day or a 3-hour day that they'd be online, that they're having every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes, they put in another activity that would be conducive to help you continue to learn and stay the most focused, but also getting some physical activity into it as well.
And also part of this is to create, there is some routine, some synchronous, where we're all together at certain times, but also by having it available in an asynchronous way when students are ready, when families are, because there is that acknowledgement that you may be both working from home, both parents and a family, and you may be able to help your child at 3 o'clock or at 6 o'clock. And so that is why we really wanted to have the flexibility for teachers and for students and for families to be able to access the learning when it's most convenient. Well, there will be some actual class discussions, class meetings, depending on how a teacher thinks learning can best be facilitated, because we know that's so valuable. But we also don't want to have that expectation that you're sitting in front of a computer, you have to do so. 5 or 6 hours a day is the only way to access your learning.
This is a relevant one for this discussion. What if we as parents need additional guidance in navigating Schoology or other sites to help better support and hold accountable their students? What can they do? Who can they call?
The first line would be to reach out, of course, to the classroom teacher, and there is we have a tech support line also. I believe that's in our parent resources. If there's some technical glitches with some of the equipment or accessing some of the platforms, and again, if there are barriers, we want to be able to help teachers, parents or families access the learning.
If they're not answered, if their questions aren't answered that way, by all means, please contact the principal, and we'll make sure we get them in contact with the right person to help assist them with that.
And we have some how-to videos on how to log into Google Classroom, how to log into Schoology. So there are on that website for parents how-to videos and even a number to call to our technology services if they need actual assistance.
And again, that's on rocklinusd.org. It's right there on the homepage. It's a brand new parent resource guide that our educational services folks have put together for you. It's there now if you want to take a look. An important question. I've had meetings at school regarding my son that included his teachers, counselor, principal, and district psychologist to help ensure success for her student. How do we go about continuing that kind of support during this time?
And so I believe that question might be referring to how we conduct what we call student study team meetings to support children and students who may need some additional supports. I know our counselors are working with students and families, and I'm going to let the principals give some specifics.
Yeah, exactly it. And the first point of contact there would probably be through their counselor, who would probably have, and I know that it would at least be documented in areas of what type of services that student would be getting. And the student study team, it would be a virtual meeting, obviously, but we'd still be able to provide that guidance. And then also our partners Wellness Together have also are offering services during this time. And we know, as Travis said earlier, that social emotional issues may have even increased during this time with the increase in stress. And so we are aware of that, and we do have counselors contacting kids and kids contacting counselors. And, I just know in the last couple of days, we have referred people to Wellness Together, for that. So that part of school is still open. It might look a little bit different with the virtual part of that, but we definitely are still providing those resources.
And then at the elementary level too, again, yes, we do have that Wellness Together. We unfortunately don't have counselors. So Wellness Together is providing a lot of that support for our students. In addition, we are PBIS schools. So some teachers are actually reaching out to their students that they were checking in and checking out with, just to connect, see how they're doing, and give them any support or help them with anything that they might have. So that's happening too at the elementary level.
So beyond on the counselors and our Wellness Together mental health referrals, which are still in place, in our school psychologist, also just want to take a minute to remind folks that if you are worried, or you're stressed, or you're concerned, or someone that is, please reach out. Let someone know. We also put on our website some suicide hotline numbers and other numbers. So there is help. If you or someone else that does need assistance, please reach out. Please call the hotline, contact an adult, a teacher, principal, or someone else, because you are not alone. We will get through this together. And so please let people know that may need that assistance, that there are those resources.
This one just came in. Kids are incredibly resilient. Our teachers are some of the best in the country. Do we really need to drag out distance learning through the end of May? Compliment and telling it like it is. Who would like to start?
It goes a little bit to what I spoke to earlier. If you were to go a 5-month gap without having some kind of continuity of learning, it's going to be that much more challenging to pick it back up. We think with the May 29th ending and the August 7th or August 12th, I believe, start of school the following year, that's really about 2.5 months. That's some normalcy for summer vacation. And even though we have pushed a little bit of pause in the continuity here with the distance learning, there's still enough there to provide structure for students. And as I said earlier, all the research shows that decreasing that gap is better for student learning.
No one else wants to chime in? We're good. So the first day of school in the fall, do we expect it to be different? A few questions did come in since instruction ending on May 29th. Do we still expect it to be?
And I'm happy to jump in on that. Our scheduled start of the year is August 12th for students. And so we again, our dearest hope is to have everybody back together in August and have an amazing reentry to our schools for our kids and all the adults and families. However, the public health situation will guide when school will begin and in what fashion. So we are really looking at different options. And if we are in a virtual or online setting, then we'll work through that. If there is an opportunity to be back physically together by just delaying a little bit, we can enter into those conversations and discussions. So right now, families should plan for August 12th as the beginning of the 2020-21 school year. We are. But however, we will be responsive to the changing public health situation as we've talked about it. So that is the date I would plan for if I was coming back to Rocklin Unified next year, which I plan to. And I also would encourage you just to stay tuned. We will continue to communicate if there's any changes regarding that. But the fact is, we just don't know right now. But we're hoping for the best, but planning for every situation that we can foresee.
And I do think also beyond, assuming we can come back non-virtually, there's likely to be changes in the way we interact and the way we're at school. You know, the governor was very clear about this the other day. He talked about we may have staggered start times. We may not be able to do assemblies and PE the way we've done in the past. So we're going to have to sort of rethink all that. And as Roger said, you know, based on the recommendation of our Placer County health officer, we'll take those recommendations. But I think it's fair to expect it might very well look different as we re-enter, regardless of how we do that.
And that question came up, what is the long-term plan for the 2021 school year? I know things are up in the air. Would some of you like to address some of the items that might be on your plate?
Let me just again add that, and I think I want to build on what Rick said, is that while we may enter in one way, we would hope that as the public health situation evolves throughout the school year, such as lessening of shelter in place and social distancing, that we can evolve into more of a normal school routine. So how we start the year, we hope, and most likely will be different in some regards to how we end the year next year. So that's just one of those situations that we'll continue to monitor and adjust, just like all of us are doing in our own personal lives.
And again, I will just reiterate that from an educational services standpoint, instructional services, that we really do want to be communicating with teachers, the grade level prior to the grade level that students are entering, and have some understanding of concepts and skills we may want to review, some ways of assessing where students are, and and starting and taking them from where they are to ensure their success. So the traditional syllabus, if you will, may look a little different as we start the year. We're confident, however, that we are going to be able to make strides and get that rhythm back.
I think you just answered this one, but given we had less time for new material instruction, has there been any cross collaboration between elementary and middle schools, and then of course middle to high schools because of all this? Maybe we go into detail a little bit more.
We built into the some of the times when students will have some non-instructional times on Monday. Teachers will be collaborating, and we built some time for what we call vertical articulation, so that across the grade levels and grade spans, we can have conversations about the essentials that need to be reviewed, or essentials that need to be covered more deeply before starting the next year's syllabus.
And from an elementary perspective, we actually started working on that this past week with our teachers, who looked at the grade level below and above, just to see what their wish list was to ensure of content covered. So teachers are very mindful of that, and are planning their instruction around that piece too.
And I was just going to add, that's just the beauty of having a unified district, is that you have that continuity of that vertical articulation that we can capitalize on.
All right, here's kind of a nuts and bolts one. Will the juniors have a chance to get a senior parking spot for next year?
There's plenty out there right now. Yes, we would. That would still be, again, that planning to plan. And as soon as we have that information, as Superintendent Stock said, we have every hope of starting on August 12th, but obviously it may look a little bit different. And when we know more, we'll communicate more.
We talked about the distance learning, our online learning plan that we have. That is on the homepage of our website. We have a few questions. Where can I get that? But teachers will also be communicating that out as well in schools, right? We got a few questions about that.
Schoology, for secondary, Schoology is the main platform to access, and that would have everything on there from on the initial page when you go in for a school-wide post, and then for each individual teacher, they would have regular updated pages.
And then from an elementary perspective, again, as we do not have Schoology, the main form would be through teacher email, and then would communicate out then the virtual learning platform, whether it be Google Classroom or Seesaw, in which instruction will be delivered.
For the secondary level, it's also worth noting that the kids have all the students will know their Schoology, will know how to access it. Parents can have access to their kids. You just may never have done that before or needed to, and you may want to now. So this is your opportunity to go and on our website, you can find about how to get a Schoology account and connect it to your child's.
And one thing I want to add to that too is I know it's a little bit more pertinent at the secondary level, but secondary sites are starting to formulate kind of a go-to document that breaks down like a department by department of this is how, math is going to approach distant learning. This is how social science. So kind of a one-stop shop. I don't know that they're out there to parents yet, but I know that's a document that the secondary sites are working on to make it a little bit easier to kind of understand and have some consistency in those subject areas, whatever grade level their students might be, and assuming households have more than one student crossing different grade levels at each of our sites.
Kind of address this. I can see some folks might be joining us a little later, so I do want to kind of repeat it. How do we get additional support for high school students, and we can look at all students that have special needs and who have struggled while on campus? You all alluded to things, but maybe a few of you could recap that and how we're supporting our students now, those students.
So again, students with special needs, I know our special education department is working with case managers to reach out to families to look at how we can support them and their IEP goals through virtual learning. Again, some of the goals may be supported differently than others, in an online environment, and so it's really a case-by-case basis. And again, I know the special ed, all the staffs, the support providers and case managers have been meeting in the last 3 days to look at how they might be able to support services for students.
And the other resources we're using on that are the paraprofessionals. Oftentimes students have great connections with those paraprofessionals that, again, provides that normalcy and more support for them.
And Kathy alluded to this a little earlier about there's always a silver lining in any situation. And one of them that we've seen come out, at least at the secondary level, and I think it's happening at the elementary level as well, is with our service providers for our special education students or EL students or whatever other service providers we have on our campuses, the schedule of distant learning has allowed them to participate a lot more directly in PLC meetings that they normally wouldn't have the time to do. So those service providers are in a department meeting or a subject or grade level meeting that, in a traditional setting, they maybe wouldn't have access to as regularly. So they are as up to speed as the teachers providing that content and that instruction, and as much as the students should be as well. So it's a little different kind of approach to their services, but kind of in an area where they're a little bit more knowledgeable or directly knowledgeable in the conversations, developing that curriculum and supporting it from the foundational elements as well.
And just to be clear, I know our paraprofessionals at the elementary level are working in a slightly different capacity with regards to being engaged with the classroom and some of their learning. We don't have paraprofessionals at this time reaching out individually with students. We want them to be working with teachers. I know it looks a little different at the secondary level. Mm-hmm. Because, that is some of the role that they play with students in special education at the secondary level.
Great. A few questions came in, and I feel the need to address them because some folks are still asking for clarification on grades versus work expectation required versus recommended for not just the high school, but the elementary and middle school levels. Can we do a little recap?
So at the elementary level, again, students do have the opportunity to improve their second trimester grade. It's not a grade, it's a progression. So a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3 by doing some work with their teacher and some informal assessment, project-based learning, something where they can demonstrate their understanding of those essential skills. Students would work with their teachers as to what that looks like. So yes, students would have the opportunity to improve their grade in those essential standards. There will be no way that a student's grade or number will go down during this time.
Let me take a shot at this one, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. So here's my understanding as a parent of the secondary, which is that we have 2 semesters, right? So one semester is in the book. We were halfway through the second semester. So for the third quarter, the first quarter of the second semester is in the book. Every child has a grade. That grade, if you do nothing, will become your semester, your second semester grade. You'll just keep that grade forward. You cannot go down. If you had a B, you could not go down to a C no matter what. You do, though, have the opportunity to take that grade and raise it so that your final semester grade is higher than your third quarter grade. And you do that by engaging with your teacher and having agreement on what it is that you need to do, what you miss, what you need to learn, and how do you improve your grade. And every teacher will engage with you based on what you need to do. So you can go forward to get that second semester grade change, but you cannot go down.
Right, and I just want to add a little bit to that, Rick, and I think this goes without saying, but I would be remiss to not say it. But there's a realization that we're not giving grades away, and we're not miracle workers. If a student is, we're not expecting students to go from a very low percentage to having an A just because we're doing distant learning. We need to be realistic in our expectations, but we do want to provide as many opportunities for students to earn or preserve credit in those courses. So if you have a low grade, be realistic in those expectations. Teachers are not being asked to or expected to provide, gifts of extra credit and an absorbent amount of credit that can be participated through to jump your, so everybody's leaving at the end of May with a 4.0 GPA. But again, we do want to provide opportunities in continuity of education, and students should be rewarded in some form for that work that they are participating in.
And just the only thing I would add to your explanation, Rick, and just a little bit on that, it was instead of extra credit, we look at it as a deeper level of understanding on a previously learned skill. And so that everybody has been exposed and acquired some level at that skill. We would use those skills to look at new content with a deeper level. You possibly could raise that third quarter grade.
And I just want to also this is not new for our teachers. This is the process we use year in, year out of working with essential skills, working with students to do correctives and to show mastery of learning. So we're very fortunate that our teachers are very skilled in this. Our students are familiar with this, whether they've been with us 4 years or one semester, of how this process works. But again, it is incumbent that students, families reach out, connect with their teacher, and also have those realistic expectations. And parents want to encourage you, have realistic expectations for your student. If your student's been struggling in a course, to all of a sudden expect them to move to an A in 6 weeks of online learning may not be realistic, and frankly may add stress to your student who already is experiencing some anxiety. And so we really want to make sure that we do set a realistic expectation for not just students and teachers, but also for parents as well.
And just to reiterate, and I'm not sure if this is an additional question, is that kind of the beauty of our system, and it may not lend itself completely for distant learning, but the grading system that we have in place, by not giving D's and F's and by working with students in multiple opportunities to demonstrate mastery, really lends itself to this process.
I think some easy ones. What's the best way for a student to get a work permit signed?
So those are online at both schools. If they go into the counseling website, it'll link them into the College and Career Center, and they will be able to get those. They print them, they take them to the employer, get them signed, and then send them back in, and then the paperwork would be filed. So both of those, all that can be done digitally now and electronically.
And a few questions. How do I submit vaccine records?
So there's a way online, just as part of our enrollment process, to be able to scan documents and submit them online, and that process is underway.
Okay. Is there a way for GATE students who are not in the self-contained program to be given access to the same sources and teaching as those students in the program? That one just we're kind of getting some one-off about different topics now.
So that's probably more of an elementary question. One of the neat things that teachers have been doing over the last few days is working within their grade level teams. In fact, our GATE teachers at Rocklin Elementary have been working within their grade level teams and have been creating some really incredible lessons around those essential standards, and then posting them to what we call in Rocklin Unified the Hub, which is kind of a library of resources for teachers to access different grade levels, but their own grade level lesson plans. So the content of GATE, or that piece, is actually, it's in that hub and is available through the work that those GATE teachers did do with their grade level teams.
This one I can answer. Will the session be recorded for parents and folks who missed it? Yes, it is being recorded, and by tomorrow at noon, we will post this on our Facebook page as well as our homepage of our district website, rocklinusd.org. And this one, a few of them alluded to getting a lot of emails from the district and their teachers. Will this next phase ease up a bit on the work and the emails? I'm not sure which is harder to keep up with. Can we just focus on essential skills? I can also speak to the district emails that go out. We try to keep them to a minimum. Superintendent Stock has a lot to talk about. We do want to update our families, so we try to do at least once a week. We will be putting out our newsletter as we have each month, our USD special newsletter. But I can't speak to the other emails that they're getting from their sites. Folks are getting.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we try to find that balance and not inundate people with messaging, but we also want to be thorough. And so our commitment or our idea on messaging is when we have new information, then we want to try to package it and get a timely email out. And what we know is important information that people would want to know for planning purposes.
And I'll just say that while I understand that, people don't want more email, I don't either, is that we would rather err on over communicating with you than under communicating. So again, your feedback is great to give us what is that right balance, so we can calibrate the best we can. And we also try to use multiple platforms, websites, social media, and other avenues. But again, we'd rather err on over communicating than under communicating with you.
And I think there's an element, full transparency. There's going to be a lot of that starting probably yesterday through the rest of this week as we make the shift. And hopefully we'll see that back off and as students kind of hit their groove and kind of find a rhythm. I know Mr. Stewart's mentioned this a few times. Once we can establish a routine, we're hopeful that the communication piece will just be on an as needed basis and not so much the overwhelming. But like Superintendent Stock said, we hear you guys with that, but we're going to err on the side of one too many emails than one too few emails and missing some kind of key groups or information that needs to get pushed out.
Thanks, Travis. We have a few minutes left. This one came in. It's an important. Governor Newsom obviously just announced plans to potentially reopen the state in the near future. This includes continuing social distancing into the next school year. What does this mean for practices and conditioning for sports in the summer and into the school year?
So again, we will take direction from our public health officer, and in a conference call with her this afternoon, she indicated that she's also looking at the trend data, looking at the best practices, and we just don't have answers right now on what the impact will be to athletics. Again, we know how meaningful sports and athletics and other activities, whether it be band or drama, are for our students, and we would love to continue those as close to normal as possible. However, we will have the public health officer and the guidelines we get on how to keep students safe guide us in that. And so we don't have those answers, but for now, we are in a shelter in place. We are instructed to limit the number of contacts that we have. And so that had a curtailing effect, unfortunately, on our spring activities, athletics, arts, and others. And so we will continue to monitor this and update our ability to allow students to participate in things as the public health situation dictates. And that may evolve. So we may be in a space where in the summer we can't begin the practices, and we may end up in a shortened season later. But we will look to evolve and as the situation does and keep people informed. But we frankly just don't have those concrete answers right now. But we know that's an important part of reopening schools as well.
All right, well, we have a few minutes left. Before we do a little round robin and have closing comments from each of you, first of all, thank you all for being with us. And of course, all the folks watching. I do want to make note, I'd be remiss if I didn't. There have been several questions about the budget and other items we didn't get to. Please stay tuned. We will be pushing out things and information in our newsletters where we can kind of show you what's going on with the budget at a glance as much as we can in terms of what is available to us. And we'll definitely share that with you in the coming weeks and months. It's an important topic to us. First, let's begin with Principal Stewart for some closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity to come to you tonight and hopefully answer some questions. If we didn't answer them here, then please feel free to send us, and I know Ms. Capper will be sending those to us, the questions that you may have. Really, as we started with, just incredibly impressed by our secondary staff, actually our entire staff, for the engagement that they've had in jumping into distance learning to provide this normalcy for your students at this time. We really think that through those connections that we make, even though they're virtually, that continuity of learning and some type of normalcy for our students will pay off in the long run. And last, I just really want to acknowledge our first responders and our newly founded stay-at-home parents, not just moms, but also dads that have been thrown into an entirely different world. I see them walking their kids by my house all the time as we're inside doing some virtual chats or whatever it is. And I really just want to give a big shout out to them for adjusting and providing a lot of stability in a very turbulent time. So thank you. Be safe and be healthy, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Principal Stewart. Principal Makis.
And I would just add that, the cornerstone of educational excellence that we are is an understatement. Our teachers, our staff are going above and beyond to embrace this distance learning model. I couldn't be more proud as a parent of 2 students in Rocklin Unified, and as an employee, I could not be more proud of the hard work that our teachers are doing to provide the continuity of learning. I'd also like to give a shout out to our Ed Services team, who tirelessly worked in conjunction with our instructional coaches over the break to provide some very quality professional development for our teachers, who have given us just some really great feedback and are excited not only to continue to stretch their rubber bands around this distance learning model, but also are excited to bring some of their new learning into the classroom for next year. Many teachers have reported out that they're looking at new ways of teaching and instructing for next year. So that's very exciting. Too, I'd like to thank you to our first responders out there. Couldn't do this without you, so we appreciate you. Superintendent Stock, all of our district leaders. The leadership that we have seen during this time has been absolutely incredible. And again, I couldn't be more proud as a parent and an employee.
Thank you, Principal Makis. And Travis, who heads up our wonderful teachers.
Yeah, I think both of our principals nailed it on the head. I just want to add just a sentiment as the humanitarian element to all of this is that we know you families didn't sign up and volunteer to the teachers or caretakers of your students 24. And we acknowledge that. I want to encourage our parents to lean on your teachers and your site administrators and our district as a whole to be your support system. I know you guys stand up and support us teachers, especially, and our district as a whole in a lot of things, both tough and not so tough situations throughout any school year. So I want you to know that we're here to do that for you guys as you were taking on a lot of the hats that we wear in the classroom that you gladly send your kids off for us to wear for you, and you kind of had thrown onto your plate given this whole pandemic situation. So don't be afraid to let us be a support mechanism for you guys as much as you've been for us in the past. We really appreciate that. And it's one of those, it takes a village situations, and Rocklin is the best village in my opinion to be handling this situation. I couldn't be more prouder as somebody that grew up here and somebody that now works here and has children of my own going through this with us. And the learning curve is that it's a learning curve. Don't be afraid to put things down every once in a while, and your family is the utmost important thing in this entire situation. So, and we acknowledge that as educators. Our feelings aren't going to be hurt that my academic content may not be the number one priority of your student and household right now, and that's okay. But we want to make sure that we offer opportunities for your students for when they are ready and the time is appropriate, so we can continue to provide that excellence in education that we strive to do in Rocklin.
Thank you so much, Travis. Dr. Pond?
Just very quickly, I am so proud to be part of Rocklin Unified. I talk to colleagues around the state, and I look at what other districts are doing for their students, and I love the very reasonable approach that Rocklin is taking to provide almost a going deeper and less is more approach, and being mindful of the social emotional needs of families right now in this time. And if I could just communicate the joy, I mean, really the joy that I have been seeing with teachers as they greet each other online, of course, in our professional development, and some of the Google Hangouts that I've been invited to when they are connecting with their students. It's so amazing to see how we crave that connection, with our students. So just a great place to work, and I do have grown children, but if they were in school, I'd want them in Rocklin Unified, especially at this time. So kudos to all my colleagues and the teachers and our superintendent and school board.
Thank you, Dr. Pond. Superintendent Stock.
I just want to echo again the great thanks to all of our employees that have just risen up to meet this occasion. We've talked a lot about, and we should have, about the amazing work teachers have done and our principals have done to continue learning, to continue the caring that goes on in our classrooms and schools each day for students and families. I also want to make sure we acknowledge our nutrition services employees who have been serving meals every day, even through spring break, and will continue through the end of the year at 6 locations. They've been tirelessly working in the kitchens in a safe way, handing out meals, and our custodial crews that have been cleaning and making sure that our schools and grounds continue to remain safe and clean. And so we have a lot of folks that are seen and unseen by our families that are continuing to work. And all of our employees in the district are working remotely as they can. And so just a big thank you to them, because they make all these different things happen behind the scenes. And again, I am so thankful to be part of an amazing school district, and our Board of Trustees has provided outstanding leadership, not just in this epidemic that we face, but prior, to set us up as a school district that could continue in such a strong way. And so I'm thankful for our trustees for that leadership, and just want to say that I do really hope that our new normal becomes the intense creativity, the intense caring, and collaboration that we've seen go on during this time. And that becomes our new normal, because that is how we will get through this together. And that's how we'll answer the questions that we need to answer in all those great unknowns that face us now and in the future.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Stock. And lastly, President Miller.
Muted.
Thank you. Someone had to do it, right? It would have been wrong. I'm glad it could be me. I want to just end by saying, on behalf of my colleagues, because it really is all of us on the board, Eric, Camille, Derek, and Rochelle, we thank you and want to thank everyone for being part of this. And to acknowledge what we started with these are obviously really hard times. And one of the hardest parts of this is what we don't know. There are things we just don't know. We want to be able to answer questions. We want to be able to say it, but we don't. We just have no idea what's going to happen in the fall, or what's going to happen with this virus. But the reason that we have this forum tonight is because of what thing we can do is be as transparent as possible. Tell you what we do know, tell you what we don't know. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation, why we're trying to communicate in every way we can. We appreciate this enormous amounts of questions we got. We tried to answer them all. If we didn't, the FAQ was up on the website. Please go look at it. We will constantly be changing it, updating as we get more questions in. If we didn't answer tonight, we'll answer it there. I also say we're committed to doing this again. If people found this helpful, we are happy to continue to have this conversation in any format that helps people. If we want to have one just for secondary, one just for primary, we'll do that. One thing I will notice, we will try not to use as much education needs. We'll try to keep our acronyms down a little bit, but we will try to make sure we're there in any way we can to answer people's questions. And then finally, I just want to join all my colleagues in thanking everyone. Thank you everyone here who was here tonight, Travis and Amanda, Davis and Kathy and Roger, for being part of this and working into the night. But our teachers, I have to say, can you imagine, in whatever job it is you do, within a week, do the exact same job but online? That's unbelievably hard to do. It's not a simple task. And so what we're asking folks is a huge lift, and the way people have taken this on has been unbelievably amazing. And what I can tell you is we're not going to be perfect. We are going to make mistakes. It's not going to go as smoothly as anyone wanted. But the thing is, we are learning, we're trying, we're figuring out what works, and we're trying to get better every day. And what I will tell you is, even in these times, has been said, you know, in difficult times like this, I think character shows, and you could see in the staff of our schools, in our admin folks, in our classified people, our cafeteria workers, character showing, and you couldn't be more time to be proud of Rocklin. We are continuing to work hard. We will continue to strive to make sure we don't do what we do. We learn from everything we're doing, but just deeply appreciate everyone's hanging with us, being engaged with us, and continuing the work you're doing with your kids at home as we, you know, continue to go forward together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, President Miller. We thank you all again for joining us. We appreciate all of you adapting to the challenges COVID-19 presents. We thank you all for making our school district an outstanding one. And don't forget, we're posting several times a day on our social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. So please email us your home learning stories. We've already gotten many at rusdcommunications@rocklinusd.org, or to me, dcapra@rocklinusd.org. We'll also continue to pitch local media. TV stations have been showcasing the creative things our staff and teachers are doing to stay connected. All of this information is on our website, rocklinusd.org. And finally, we'll place the link to the rebroadcast of this Ask RUSD event on Facebook and our website no later than Thursday at noon. Thank you so much for being with us and making our district so successful. Thank you again.